Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom thoughts. In this episode, I've got a call from Joe from Hindsightless, and I talk about what is the role in GMs in the current role playing zeitgeist. And of course, we've got more adventure in the land of the Tales of the Dragon Slayers. So let's get to it.
Yo, Phantom. So I'm listening to your episode, and right now I'm not finished yet, but you're talking about improv and RPGs and the microscope RPG and stuff. So I thought I'd give a call. First off, I wanted to talk about improv a little bit because improv isn't only yes and, it's also yes but, no and, no but. Like there's more to it than just the yes and. And I think that's important, right? It's about playing off of what the other people are doing, but you don't always have to kind of go down that path right away. And that holds true with the microscope role playing game. Yeah, you don't really you don't want to negate what the other person is doing, but like for example, someone if you're playing the microscope game, someone puts down the idea, okay, this is the reign of King Ulfric and it is a happy rule. In On your turn, you could put something to the effect of you could start a whole new era where you say, you know, King Ulfric is dead and his reign ended in fire and bloodshed. Or you could have events put into the King Ulfric time period that sort of shows that maybe it isn't so bright and happy, because that's one of the things you do when you're playing microscope. If you're putting down an era, you decide if it's got a, if it's a happy time or a dark time, a light time or a dark time, basically. Anyway, yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because and part of microscope during part of the period, you're not supposed to talk to the other players about what you're doing, what you think should happen next. It specifically says do not talk to the other players during this period. You could talk before this period and after this period, but during the period you don't talk about it. So if somebody does something you don't like or something, you don't say, oh, maybe don't do that, let's go this other way. So it's an interesting game. I still haven't played it. I don't know if I'm actually going to use it now. I mentioned maybe using it to start my next campaign. I don't know if that's going to happen now, but I'll probably talk more about that on my next show. So anyway, dude, take it easy. Good stuff. Keep it up. Peace out.
All right, Joe, thanks for laying down the knowledge there. I don't know that much about improv or about microscope, even though I have the book sitting over here on my shelf, which, says more about me than anything, I guess. But to hear from someone that's read through it more or knows more about it is very interesting, because I've only ever heard the yes and part of improv. That's whenever I've heard about improv, it's yes and yes and yes and. And so it's interesting to know that those other options that you see now in a lot of RPGs or RPG tables are part of that, and it kind of makes me wonder the first time that was put into an RPG or used as part of a role playing procedure, was that someone who was had been trained in improv and that sort of thing. So it's real cool to hear that from you. So thank you for calling in. Something that I guess I've been thinking about that struck me in the last, I don't know, maybe few weeks, I guess, is a question of what is the role of the game master in role playing today? You see in OSR and old school circles a lot of talk about the development of procedures, the extensive use of flowcharts or tables, not doing anything behind the screen because of player agency, and rolling that into kind of the new school NSR revolution uh, developments in some gaming where there's more and more player-facing rules, including the execution of game functions itself. You hear a lot of DM advice from many of both corners, advising letting the players even do more rolling of the dice that you might think would normally be handled by a GM, doing things to help determine what sort of encounters they're going to have or how NPCs or creatures react to them. There are game systems and play styles and procedures also coming into vogue that had the players even having a role in generating the world, whether this is part of the rule set, simply part of a discussion rules, a session 0, or some sort of a mini game. You see this particularly in some circles of people who are interested in the Braunstein, however you say it, branch of the RPG tree, a game that essentially sets up the game. You have the no prep movement that is kind of instilling in GMs that they just need to have, uh, rule books and procedures and random tables available to them and just interpret them as they go. And a lot of this, along with the player facing rules and the emphasis on rolling in the open, is all intended to prevent railroading, to keep the GM from writing a novel and making the players play their novel, which is a common criticism in some of these circles. So you're stripping away a lot of the world building and development away from the GM, which can include even through the course of play if you have players taking on the roles of factions within the game world. And that the aim seems to be more and more about placing the GM in a purely referee playing mode, just making sure that the rules are followed as the game is played. Which makes me wonder, at what point is the GM, in fact, just merely playing a board game and watching the players play? But then the flip side of that is in some of the conversations about greater immersion in a gaming world and the characters that they're playing, and this is mainly aimed at the players, means doubling down on what the GM does, placing all the rules within the parameters of the GM, maybe even all the roles, so that the players more or less are just describing the actions of their characters and leaving the GM to organize and adjudicate almost everything else. And advice for GMs frequently is includes ways that they can make sure that they are drawing everyone in, that everyone is participating, that their responsibility is to help bring the players into the game even more. And there's a lot of discussion about an always on style of play with faction play and between session activities, which, they call it downtime activities, but really, if you're doing stuff in it, it's not really downtime, even more so for the GM who's going to have to respond to the activities that the players are doing between gaming sessions. And the strength of this style play that is always talked about is that by having this always on style and pairing it with a one-to-one passing of time between sessions, it's easy for the players to know what they can do and the time they have to work with, because it's the same passage of time as they experience. Their characters experience the same passage of time that they do between sessions. And this helps alleviate some of the stress on the players and even the GM if the rules are simple enough that the players can adjudicate some things between themselves. But overall, the GM is still going to have to keep up with what is going on in the world if they're going to keep the world consistent, which if they're moving there's multiple groups in this world, can be even more of a load. So you have sort of these twin movements involving what a GM's role is. On the one hand, taking more and more of them out of the creative process and the decision making process, but on the other hand, demanding more of them in terms of keeping things organized. Keeping things organized and managing the rules so that the players have an easier time to play. And you couple that with the the stories, or the passing on of information, depending on how you view it, that there's a lack of GMs. You see the rise of paid GMs more and more those types of services going on. You hear about GM burnout, and then there's lots of debates of the merit of the different styles of old school and one-to-one play and new school, and what drives GMs to burn out. You talk about the forever GM, and you have to wonder if this changing role has something to do with that. With that, on the one hand, we're adding load to take load off of players to enable them to do some things for themselves, but that means there are some things that the GM is going to have to take up to enable that. But on the flip side, those things are largely logistical, and the creative play that the GM would normally be involved with things like world building are now more relegated to tables and giving more of that over to the players. So that the traditional role of GM as the builder of the world and the bringer of adventure hooks and prepared encounters to to supplement what is existing in a module they're using or tables that they're using is being broken down. And the GM, in some quarters, if you listen to the way people describe how they want the play balance to go, the GM is less playing a game than just overseeing other people playing a game, to the point of being on demand every day, even when you're not at a play session, because you're doing the faction play and the downtime play in between sessions. So what is the role of GM in the current gaming hobby? Are they just now an arbitrator of rules and an executor of die rolls, with their participation in the creative side of the hobby being limited to interpreting roles on a table and maybe making some funny voices for some NPCs? Is there such a thing as too much player facing, too much player empowerment? Are we heading to a point in our hobby where the GM becomes largely irrelevant, to where we develop rule sets and play styles that simply become what we refer to as the players playing the game, and those who are currently GMs instead become semi-anonymous authors of content that hopefully some group of players somewhere will buy or use? So those are just some thoughts I've had watching various videos, listening to various podcasts, reading various blogs, and having ideas bounce around and combine in my brain. And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers. Day 118 since the dragon began its rampage. Party chooses to go up one of the two chimneys that they have heading up to the third upper level of the keep. The party consists of Katja, half-elven, first-level cleric, first-level fighter, fourth-level magic user; Bernie Keebler, elven, first-level fighter, first-level magic user, first-level thief; Sven Svenlig, first-level halfling fighter; Michael, first-level human fighter; and Harl and Quinn, two first-level human rangers. Party goes to one of the chimneys going to the third upper level. Bernie climbs the chimney and lowers down a rope. They all ascend and take the corridor north 30 feet, then west 30 feet to where they come to a cross aisle. 30 feet to the north, they see a staircase. They can't see all the way down to the south or to the west. They choose to go west. The corridor turns southwest for 30 feet, and then south for 90 feet. At the end, they find a door on the west that opens into a 40 by 20 room, with one opening to the north. Going through that opening, they find a 40 by 30 chamber filled with orcs. When I rolled for monsters for this room, I rolled first that I was going to roll on a custom table of creatures that I'd already run across, and then I rolled up the orcs. Since we hadn't found the orcs' lair, I rolled to see if this was their lair, and it was, which automatically made the residents of this room the chief and his guards. I decided that in this section of the keep, they would only run into orcs, since they should be based around their lair. The party won initiative, and Kacho was able to catch all but 3 of the orc guards in a web. The party was able to dispatch them in one round, and then began going to work on the other orcs who were slowly forcing their way out of the webbing. At first, only Harl and Michael with their spears could attack the orcs, but soon the rest of the party was able to join in. The party was just able to dispatch the orcs as they got near the edge before another group could come forward. Once this was done and they disposed of the webbing, they searched the room, finding copper, silver, electrum, gems, several potions, a container of oil, a case of some sort, and a wand in pottery jars. They also found a 20-foot wide secret door to the east. Securing this door, they moved north. They take a corridor north from the room, back to the intersection they'd gone across earlier, where they run into a random encounter of more orcs. These are just regular orcs, and they're able to dispatch them rather quickly. Taking the staircase to the north, they come to a hall that turns west, though they go 60 feet, which ends in a chamber 40 feet by 40 feet, where they run across the sub-chief and his guards. During the course of the battle, Michael is trapped in a man-catcher, but Sven is able to kill the orc with the man-catcher and free him. The party takes some other minor wounds, but is able to kill enough orcs that the rest surrender. The party then turn these over to the soldiers that are following them at a discreet distance and continue on. They find bags of copper and silver with the orcs, and they find a door to the north. The door to the north opens into a large trapezoidal room. It runs 40 feet north-south, with the long base to the north running 80 feet across, and the base to the south running 100 feet across. Here they find some strange metallic ores that they can't identify. The only exit out of the room is a door to the north. They open this into another trapezoidal room, this one running 30 feet from north to south, with the south base being 40 feet across and the north base being 60 feet across. Here they find more orcs, as well as some females and young. The 2 rangers are able to get enough surprise on the orcs to kill several, and then once the party joins them, they kill enough for the rest to surrender again. They return to the previous level and to the room where the orc chief was and open the secret door. It opens to a 20-foot wide hallway that goes to the east, which after 30 feet, it ends in a river with a boat on the other side. Bernie is able to use his wings of flying to recover the boat, and they continue across and go another 30 feet into a chamber that is 30 feet by 40 feet, with the 20-foot hall continuing on the other side. The room has several pieces of furniture in it, and inside a large couch they find a huge chest with silver in it. They continue following the hall to the east, coming to a large stairwell leading up to a 20-foot wide door. Opening the door, they find a 10-foot by 20-foot room with a small pile of glowing stones and crystals on the floor and more embedded in the walls. A search reveals nothing else. Tired and a little beaten up, they rendezvous with the soldiers that had been trailing them, gather up all the loot, and return to their HQ, discovering that Gus and Edgar and some of their troops have returned from the Battle of the Knolls. They are also informed that one of their heavy infantry regiments was mauled badly by a group of dire wolves that attacked the guards on the outside. As they settle down for the evening meal, the Dragon Slayers take time to catch up and plan. Joining them are Colonel Idle, the force commander, and their newly arrived Castilian, Briscoe, as well as Exodor, the leader of the gnomes scattered throughout the keep, and the dwarven chief, Gwistel. Based on recent events, I think we're going to need to go recruiting, Idle stated. Even with the rest of our troops eventually returning from the river keep, at some point we're going to have to replace our losses. Or even expand our force, chipped in Gus. Patrolling the road, the surrounding area, and this keep is taking a lot of manpower, plus an expedition to help Exodor's people get home. I think those mercenaries we met at the other keep and I can handle that. Once they return from escorting those merchants in a few days, Edgar puts in. You're really leaving us? Katja asked. Edgar smiled. My way is the way of the wild, not, he gestures around the keep, this. You are all boon companions, and I would gladly aid you in times of need, but my path is different from yours. There was a short silence. Briscoe broke it. One thing we will also need to do is hire some workers to rehab this place. Asking warriors to do this on top of their other duties thins out our ability to patrol and to have adequate time for rest. We can aid you in some of those areas, Whistle spoke up. Until our clan is fully reunited, we'd gladly aid those helping us. Warm chuckles came from all those around the table. There's also a matter of finding a new home for the ants, Bernie chimed in. Everything we're trying to do will be more complicated if that brood keeps expanding. Nods all around. Amazing how killing a dragon can get so complicated, Sven opined. There was a moment of stunned silence as everyone looked at him. What? He asked through a mouthful of meat. The group burst out laughing. For the next hour, ideas, plans, food, drink, and goodwill flowed. The opening music of this podcast is Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thank you for listening to Phantom Thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You don't have to be part of the show. If you want to contact me and let me know, hey, these are for your eyes only. I just wanted to give you thoughts, ideas, response, and it's really for your eyes or ears only. That's absolutely fine. I'd love to hear from you either way. So just let me know when you contact me. Just, I don't want to be part of the show. There are lots of different ways you can contact me. You can send me an email at phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. And that can be a regular email, or you can attach an audio file to it. You can use the message button on my podcast site on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/phantom thoughts. You can contact me via my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. You can contact me via SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/phantom thoughts. You can contact me on Discord, The Pink Phantom. All this contact information is listed in the show notes of every episode. And thank you for those who call in. Thank you for those who don't call in. I appreciate you listening and hope you'll listen again next time. Until then, I hope you have a great day.